Hi, it's Deborah Hamilton, and today we're talking to Bruce Truman. He is my dear friend from BLT Technology and Innovation Group. He has so many phenomenal thoughts on what the trends are in the animal world and veterinary medicine and pet ownership. We talked about such wonderful thoughts and ideas. I can't wait for you to hear our discussion on Why Do Pets Matter. Remember to like us, to share us, to tell people about the Why Do Pets Matter podcast. People can't find us unless you let them know about it. Thank you for being here. And now let's go listen to what Bruce has to say. Hi, I'm Deborah Hamilton. Welcome to my podcast, Why Do Pets Matter? 10 years ago, with my iPhone and a script, I recorded the first episode of the Ultimate Pet Resolution Summit, which chatted with experts about conflicts over animals. Our conversations were intimate, honest, and illustrated how disagreements over animals occur and how those disagreements can reshape people's lives and relationships. In November 2019, I started Why Do Pets Matter, a new podcast that continued these informative discussions. I'm so excited to have you here with me, continuing my exploration into a more meaningful conversation about why pets matter to all of us. My guests and I will share ideas, stories, and experiences straight from the heart, unscripted and holistic. From the bravest moments to the most brokenhearted, we will explore how to resolve disagreements over animals differently. One thing I know for sure is I want to have more meaningful conversations that will help all of us unlock that deeply felt human-animal bond that drives the emotions of conflict. Hi, it's Deborah Hamilton, and thank you again for being here with us on Why Do Pets Matter. Remember to please give us a 5-star rating and share us with your friends so that others can hear this wonderful information the way you are. Today, we are so grateful to have Bruce Truman, founder of BLT Technology and Innovation Group. He is one of my dear friends from a group called Vet Partners, and we have so much in common that I'm so glad he's here. Thanks, Bruce, for being here.
Happy to be here. Really excited about it.
Well, as we always know, who's ever listened to this podcast before, we only ask one question. And the one question is, hey, Bruce, why do pets matter to you?
Why do pets matter to me? Pets matter to me because they enrich our life. They make every single day better. I recently read a book. I'll find the official title out, but Dr. Rustin Moore wrote a book, and I do want to find the title out while we're talking here to give him some exposure. But I believe it was like Unleashing the Bond. I grew up with pets, dogs and cats, horses when I was younger, but really dogs and cats. And there's sometimes where I didn't realize why I was feeling the way I was from almost a clinical or scientific perspective, because Dean Moore also, Dr. Moore highlighted real world examples. Now I'm like, oh, that's why I feel that way. That's why every morning it's so relaxing to greet Weezer and spend time with her. That's why when she comes home, it's such a special part of the ritual in the evening, the greeting, she goes out, I call it surveys her kingdom. So she comes in the house through the doggy door after daycare. She'll look in the kitchen, she'll look around, she'll greet me, and then she's got to go out on patrol and she has to survey the backyard and make sure her kingdom is all intact, and maybe there'll be an occasional groundhog encounter or something. So no, I mean, pets mean so much to me because they enrich our daily lives and make us better humans, I believe.
I always say that now there are PhDs in the human animal bond and so many different conferences that address the needs and attractions of animals in people's lives, which anecdotally, if you've had dogs in your life as long as I've had dogs in my life, we knew without the peer-reviewed studies. But now we have peer-reviewed studies to prove that our heart rate goes down when we pet our cat.
Yeah, yeah. Habry's done a great job at some of that data, and I think the scientific validation is important. We knew it all along, but having the science behind it's important. And that book is Unleashing the Bond, Harnessing the Power of the Human-Animal Interactions.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. There's a guy, Sam Ross, who you might not know, but I gratefully met, who started a community called Green Chimneys up in Brewster, New York, which was not that far from my house. And when I started my practice, I found them and I said, wow, they did animal therapy with children who had trauma, with children who are having conduct issues. They would go there, they would live on the farm, they would be taught, they would be given executive skills and functions by virtue of taking care of the animals, right? And Sam was way before his time because he opened this up, I think, in the either the late 50s or the early 60s. He had just graduated, I think, from psychiatry school. He was a psychiatrist. And he thought that, the human animal bond is so great that if these kids really have this trauma and these issues, maybe the animals would give them the opportunity to talk to somebody, the animal. How many times, Bruce, did you talk to your animals when you were young?
Yeah, all the time, right? Yeah. And you don't even realize she looks at me and I know she has no idea what I'm talking about, but she looks at me and she's like, "Oh, you're talking about something. I want to pay attention."
Right. They're the only ones who pay attention to us all the time. And sometimes when we don't want them to pay attention. But Sam created this program and it then was connected to the University of Denver's program, which I'm pretty sure you're aware of with Phil Tedeschi, are the people who worked together with Habri to make sure that all of this information was gathered, peer reviewed, documented, so that we all know, which now I know you are in your role as a BLT's founder, you are putting together all this information that supports how people feel about their pets, how pets have impacted people's lives, and how in the veterinary industry, that's something that I think you bring uniquely to the industry because you ask these curious questions. I mean, you just had a program about cats at the Vet Partners program,
Yep.
um, and you've had programs about uh, whether purebred animals or mixed breed animals are the choice and what can we do. You've always taken these very important conversations and had them in a way that makes people think. And that's why I'm so grateful you're here because I'm sure today is going to have another wonderful conversation.
I think it will, right? And you bring up some really important points in how I've tried to approach industry conversations or maybe trend conversations. So, for example, with some of the talks I've done either at Vet Partners VMX or some of the Costco events like Anti and Pet Connect, and we did one of these at Pet Connect that I'll last year in LA that I'll speak about in a moment. But in particular, when it comes to where pets are acquired and the inventory of pets, that was a conversation I did or a presentation I did at Vet Partners a few years ago. And I try to frame this up is that if we're going to talk about change, if we're going to talk about things that are coming in the future, it may make us uncomfortable. We may not all agree with it, but that's why the Vet Partners Group is such a great place to have conversations because we are comfortable debating professionally, debating a topic. We may not agree with one another. Great debate on mid-level practitioner maybe a year ago at a Vet Partners meeting. Nobody got in a fist fight. Everybody had a nice professional discussion on both sides of the fence. And that's what's my goal with the dog population number. I was trying to show that even though we have pets in shelters, and even though that's critically important that we support those shelters and we get those pets into homes, the reality is we have shortages in the north in shelters because they've been so successful in spay neuter or adoption, and we're transporting dogs from the south to help fill those needs. So I was talking about inventory variables, and there's some people that say we have a shortage of dogs and we need more dogs, and I was trying to illuminate that. And I was also trying to get the audience members to realize that we can't alienate the dog breeder community and that Deborah, I don't know the exact number. Let's call it 25, 30%. I could be off by a few points, but for purposes of discussion, there's a big portion of dogs that come from dog breeders that are acquired, that are purchased. So we need to acknowledge that and make those clients in your veterinary practices feel just as comfortable. And there are people that won't say they bought their dog. They'll say they adopted it when in reality
Rescued it. I got him from a rescue.
yeah, I rescued it, right? Yeah, exactly. So, those have been fun discussions. I think this past year at both the Vet Partners meeting at VMX, I did a talk at VMX on predictions from the future. And I told the audience, if you're not uncomfortable with this discussion, then I have failed. And we will not all agree, but we have to talk about the future and what are predictions for the future. You're not going to agree with everything I'm saying, but we're in a safe space now to have that discussion and debate. And part of it was on dog breeders and acquisition of dogs. Another was on, and this caught the most attention, Deborah, I called it the decade of the cat. I didn't know what I was dipping my toe into, and people came out of the woodwork and were so supportive about the fact that we need to be preparing our veterinarians and our veterinary practices for more cats for a million different reasons. I won't go in because we'll run out of time, but there's going to be more cats in practices. And I did that talk also thanks to Dr. Jane Brutt and Kristen Werman. I did that similar talk at the Vet Partners meeting talking about cats. Although I don't know a lot about this from an architectural perspective and trends, I did note, and I recall early in my career when I was making sales calls on veterinary clinics in Central Florida, fresh out of graduate school, I used to go in, there used to be a dog door and a cat door in many of these practices. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, I do.
And yeah, and most of the salespeople would always go in the cat door because it minimized risks if you had a fractious dog in the waiting room. So you
Probably
always
was
go
more
in the cat
empty,
door.
and it
Pardon me?
probably was emptier.
It was always emptier, right? And that trend where I think the dog door and cat door went away. Maybe some folks know that it's coming back, but the dog and cat door went away. Now there's one door. When I was looking at database numbers, like most of the time practices were 70-30, 70% canine, 30% feline. Some practices over the past few years were even
80.
80% canine, 20% feline. And I think that's because the practice wasn't focusing on the cats or even asking, hey, your dog's in here. Do you have any cats in the household? Oh, I do, but they don't need to come in. Well, they do, right?
Right.
So,
So
and
many reasons, for so many reasons.
so many reasons. And now those numbers, though, are moving the other way, right? So we're seeing more cats in veterinary practices. And, I think that's one of my messages. And I think you know this, but I want to stress for whoever listens to this, I'm not a practice management consultant. I'm an industry consultant. The only time I go into a veterinary practice is with our own dog for care. So I don't want to ever give anybody the impression that I'm an expert when it comes to the veterinary practice. But what I look at are all the macro trends that are going on out there. And what's the data telling us? And the data is telling us that we're going to see more cats. We are seeing more cats. There's a lot of economics involved in that with some of the struggles with the economy, fact that we raised prices in veterinary practices more than inflation, and now we're seeing this slowdown and a
Yeah.
lengthening between visits. And some folks are saying, well, I'm going to get a cat because I don't have to worry about as care during the day as much. They entertain themselves, for all the different reasons. And more males I read recently are getting cats, which you normally wouldn't think of that, right? But guys are getting a cat for their first pet when they get out on their own, and women are too.
I love this because in my mind, I'm sitting here going, yes, this is my life because my son, my oldest son, got a cat instead of a dog. He had one of my dogs while he was in college. And then when he graduated, the dog came home and he said, I think I'm getting a cat. And my dogs don't like cats. So the dog couldn't really stay if he was going to get a cat. So we got a cat, Jane. And I've never had a cat. I've always had dogs. So I've never had a cat. And he just got married. So this is your dynamics perfectly because he was getting married. He said, could you take the cat for a month? That was in October. And she returned in May.
A month. Okay. All right. That's a long time. Yeah.
Oh, so she returned in May. So that was 7 or 8 months. And I do conflicts between people over animals, and some of it's in relationship breakups where you both want the cat or the dog, right? And I said, well, I don't know that I can give her back. I said, she's been with me now for 8 months and I really love her. And I had no idea. And you've done this work. You've been part of this with the CAT program and the two wonderful women, the doctors that you mentioned. Can you mention their name again?
So they're involved with Catalyst Council, and Catalyst
Catalyst, right.
Council's really done a great job with some
Yep.
of the recent market research. Everybody should check out their research, but
Oh,
Dr. Jane
absolutely.
Brutt and Kristen Werman, and there's so many others involved with Catalyst Council. I was a board member for Dr. Brunt for about 3 years and still just always a big believer in the work that Dr. Brunt and that group's doing. And they're really leading and in the forefront of preparing the veterinary community for more cats. And I'm glad we talked about it at the Vet Partners meeting. I'm glad they're really illuminating it. John Ayers, the former CEO at IDEX, John is heavily involved also and just really doing wonderful things. And, we need more pets. That's what keeps our industry thriving and healthy. And we need to have our pets free of fear, anxiety, and stress, like the Fear Free is working on. And I think there's another trend here that it's related to this, but there's another trend that I want to make sure we talk about, and that is a paradigm shift to age-related care. And the first time I heard this was David Westenberg, who's an analyst, mentioned that at the ANTI meeting, the Animal Health Nutrition Technology and Innovation Summit in London this past February or March, whenever it was. And David was on a panel with other analysts, and he said that, and I'm like, oh, wait, I like that. It's a great way to say it, but it illuminates the fact that senior care is going to become more important. If our pets have better health care, they're going to live longer. And if they live longer, there's, as I'm told by experts I know that are veterinarians, a different way to care for these
Aging pet.
elderly pets.
Yep.
Senior Dog Veterinary Society is doing a great job at leading the charge on this. That's an organization that we've been working with. I can't say we're incubating them anymore. They've grown up, they've got sponsors, they're certifying hundreds and hundreds of veterinary professionals in the space and doing great work. It's probably senior dogs now, but maybe
It'll
in
be
a few
senior
years,
pets soon.
senior cats too, right? Yeah.
Or senior pets, because you've got the horses living longer now too, and people have a number of horses. So veterinarians are going to have to shift and maybe address the period of life they find their clients' pets in. So you've got your puppy and all the things you have to worry about with your puppy. And as a breeder, this is really an important breakthrough for veterinarians because it really is important to address the animal's needs at the age they are, because if you can continue to have that conversation, but again, it's communication and education, right?
Yep.
Communication, education of the pet owner, that when they're, 1 to 3, this is what you need to do. At a 3 to 6, this is what you need to do. After 6 to 9, this is what you need to do. There are things that are important that I don't know that the normal pet owner who maybe adopts from a shelter and doesn't get that ream of paperwork that every vet hates from the breeder. So they don't necessarily know that there's a difference between the veterinary care needed for a new puppy and the impacts of the vaccinations versus the veterinary care for a youngster, 2, 3, 4. It's such an important discussion to have, and it might create that desire pet owners to continue to bring their pets to the vet, because I know there's been many discussions. I know you've been part of a few of them on LinkedIn and on Facebook where people are putting off bringing their pets to the vet, even if
Yeah.
they are sort of, you would think they are well off so they could absolutely pay for the care of their pet, but they're like, I'm just going to bring them once a year so I can get the heartworm and I can start my year, with a clean heartworm, and then the dogs will get heartworm all year. And cats, of course, I think we have to educate cat owners to understand. I remember moderating a cat parasite talk at VMX once, and never having cats, I had no idea
Right.
their
Yeah.
exposure on the bottom of your shoes. I was like,
Yep.
what? What? And so I, of course, called my son, who had the cat, Jane, and said, "You need to bring Jane to the vet and get her vaccinated. Mom, she doesn't go outside." I go, "I know, but you do, and your shoes do, and you come in." So his fix was he now, puts his shoes in a box when he comes in. He never walks around the house with them. And I went, "Well, that's good, but he doesn't bring her to the vet." So I think this is an educational piece that veterinarians and those really dedicated, like Diana Agner, to cats, need to get out there and educate these cat owners, because for some reason people think, I've got a cat, low maintenance, don't need any vet care.
Yeah, and they think that, and you're right. So mosquitoes, I remember maybe it was Zoetis did some promotions a few years ago that really stuck with me. I'm like, yeah, your cat doesn't go outside, but does it sit on the screened in porch? And is that screened in porch 100% screened in? Is the mosquito going to get in? Is another parasite going to get in? Deborah, there's a couple of other trends I want to highlight here that are on my mind. I don't know how much more time we have,
Oh, we
but
have plenty of time. We have at
okay.
least 10 more minutes, so let's go. Good.
Good, good. You brought up the lengthening of time between visits, and the data is showing this, that there's this lengthening of time. So a delay, we're all thinking it's probably because of finances and economy. I think there'll be a role in the veterinary practice, and we're seeing this in specialty referral practices already, but I'm going to call it a PFC, a pet financing coordinator. I think there's this opportunity for somebody out there, it's not me, but somebody out there to do a certification program as a pet financing coordinator. And when that pet comes in, and we don't want to do this and scare pet parents off, right? We know the cost of a dog, we know the cost of a cat annually and for lifetime. And we have data in the industry, because I remember back in the Vet Street days, I asked my buddy to query the database, and the database had 23 million patients in it, 11 million pet owners, pet parents, and 23 million dogs and cats. And it was all like an anonymous query, right? So we were very respectful of the data. But I'm like, tell me the most expensive dog to own. And at that time, it was a Bernese Mountain Dog.
Yep.
We knew the data, we knew how long they live. We could aggregate that data and tell you what the expense was on that dog. And there's a whole bunch of other dogs that are up there too. And I'm sure our insurance company partners could share that with us also. But that data is out there. And I think a pet financing coordinator is going to be a role where at the beginning of that journey with that dog or cat, Mrs. Smith, want to recommend you get Care Credit now. You need to pick an insurance company, and we have a membership program for you that fits into all of that. And those are just three basics that I think everybody should be considering. So that's an idea for somebody out there to do this certification program, maybe Care Credit or something. I think another trend that I'm excited about is in-home care and the movement where we are sending veterinary technicians slash nurses into homes, not just mobile operations, full mobile operations to the veterinarian, but there's individuals out there, trends out there, companies out there that are sending a veterinary technician slash nurse into a home to collect blood, urine, feces, to do nail clippings, to do different things like that. And I think in-home care and cats is going to be very relevant. In-home care for cats and telehealth, telemedicine services for cats so that they get the care. And then the last little thing on that is a prediction that I'm doing for the future. And it's from my own personal experience. I see my doctor face to face once a year, but I will see him at the 6 month mark virtually, and he will write me a script to LabCorp. I go in and I get my blood drawn. When that blood results post in my portal, then we do a meeting and we go over my blood results. Why can't we do that with dogs and cats? Now, I know there's a million reasons why. And once again, I'm not a veterinarian. I'm the idea guy here, right? Looking at trends. There's a million reasons why maybe that concerns folks, but there's also a million reasons why that half a year, mid-year engagement, there could be facilities that you take your dog and cat just to do a blood draw, maybe.
Like Quest Diagnostics, right?
Yeah, like a Quest for Pets, Quest Pet. I see that in the future, because then we're going to get better insights into the health of our pet. Our veterinarians will have more information. I think that would be great. I mean, we're working on a project now for a company called Pronova that's doing an in-home saliva test for key biomarkers. In the future, I want to know if my dog's kidney, liver, heart, inflammation, glucose, probably left one out there, maybe stress, right? Cortisol.
Yep.
I want to know those parameters because if my dog's acting a little mopey, I'd like to know, should I bring it into the veterinary clinic or should I wait? So I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on out there. I know that was a mouthful, but those are things I'm passionate about right now.
No, I'm so thrilled because that's so much information that the people listening to the podcast can ponder and think about. Because maybe not in the shelter world as much, but in the purebred world, we are doing a lot of this, working with different research groups to pull our bloods, our salivas, and everything, and every year to make sure we know where our dogs are on the scale, and who's a carrier of this or who is having issues with thyroid or whatever it is. So I think there's a huge upside for every pet owner if there were groups out there who would give them the opportunity, sort of like Doc in a Box, right? And they would simply be the people who take the blood and then give it to your vet. And that would enable you to have a relationship with your veterinarian that's collaborative with someone who's helping your veterinarian do this work that isn't necessarily um, necessary for them to do. They want to put
Yeah.
their hands on your dog. They want to see your dog. They want to feel your dog. But if you got the bloods before, then they could spend more time with your dog, as opposed to now when it's usually just the vet tech and the veterinarian has a certain amount of time to look at your dog, diagnose your dog, tell you how much it's going to cost, and then take care of your dog.
You know what else you're doing there? And Monica Dixon Perry brought this up at the Vet Partners meeting in DC. And if folks that are listening, if you're not figuring out that you need to be at a Vet Partners meeting, now you know, because
Yep.
this is where all these conversations happen. Monica brought up the separating of transactions. And if we think about a future state where there is a Quest Pet, well, I'm going to pay for that and it's going to be a separate fee. So when I go into my veterinary clinic, my overall total fee for that visit is going to be lower because I already paid for the blood. Well, Monica brought up how, and veterinary practices are doing this, but I don't even think they know they're doing it, and we need to do more of it, is separating those transactions, the pharmacy transactions. If you're doing your annual visit and you need heartworm, flea, and tick, well, do the annual visit, write the script in the veterinary practices online portal, whatever portal they're using. They can buy that later, right? When they get home. So now my visit, I'm making this up, goes from $500 to maybe $300. And if I separate out my blood in a future state, now that value prop, that value relationship, I think is even more enhanced. Last thing I want to say is tomorrow is National Take Your Cat to the Vet Day. I know this isn't going to come out before that probably, but Kristen Werman just posted that August 22nd is Cat to Vet Day, which I think is really cute. Her post is about, in the voice of a cat, what they want to see, and it's very touching. I think that's great.
Bruce, we have so much more to talk about. I hope you'll come back because these trends are really important for all the pet owners on here, all the veterinarians on here, all the lawyers on here, and breeders who are going to listen to the wonderful insight you have into what might be coming down the pike, what you might want to come down the pike and support. You have been fabulous, as I suspected you would be, and I hope. I know your schedule is really busy, but I hope we can invite you back to continue this discussion because there's so much out there that you're so valuable to my listeners to hear from. So thank you.
Happy to do it. Happy to come back. And thank you for the opportunity to appear on your podcast.
Thank you so much. And everyone, remember to kiss your dog, your horse, your cat, your lizard, your bird, your snake, whatever it is, because pets matter. They really make our lives whole. So take care.